we met actually at the Bloggers Barbecue or
Right.
Summit or Hamburger Summit. Or
Yeah, the
whatever
Hamburger
it's called.
Summit.
And that was in Burlington at North Beach. And how was that experience for you?
Well, what a great event. You know, I mean, I think that it was a great event for people who are interested in politics, who are political junkies. I mean, it was just so much fun to be there. Many of the statewide candidates were there. Mm-hmm. Many of the bloggers who I've only read their bylines and never met them.
Right.
So it was a real pleasure to meet folks and put a face with names. And so if you like politics and you like burgers, it was a perfect day.
Sure. There is this, I don't know, I think there's some advice out there maybe from the world of the mainstream media that politicians should keep bloggers at bay or sort of arm's length. But it was really great to see, I think, at least 3 of the gubernatorial candidates were there. And it was, they also were not like trying to, I didn't feel like I was being worked for my vote. It really felt like a very nice, relaxed, just conversations.
Well, I wonder, I don't doubt what you're saying, that, that some politicians might want to keep bloggers at arm's length. I just don't understand it. I don't understand it because it seems to me the primary job of anybody who wants to be involved in politics is to reach out to as many people as you can, not to start making that group smaller and smaller and say no bloggers in the group, but to make the group bigger and bigger, to include bloggers, people that don't blog. I'm doing a lot of work on the telephone, trying to call people. I'm trying to make 3,000 calls. Between now and the primary. I'm just about halfway there.
Wow.
With about 2 weeks left to go, I think I'm gonna get all the way to Z.
Great. Are you actually going in alphabetical order?
I'm actually going in alphabetical order.
That's nice.
And I can tell you that from today's experience, there are a lot of M's.
You're in the M's?
Yeah, that's okay. A lot of M's.
What is that? The French influence, Marcotte, Marshall.
Yeah, and also the Irish influence or Scottish
the MCs,
influence.
Right?
Yeah.
The MCs must go on for a while.
So
nice.
But they're also, let me say at this point, the people whose last name starts with M are very nice. Extremely nice group of people.
You've had a nice positive. Oh, yes. Yeah, okay. I won't ask what letter seems to be the most annoyed with callers.
No, but I will tell you one story. I got a guy on the phone, and he said, and I had sent out a postcard a few days earlier. And he says to me, "Yeah, I got your postcard in the mail." And I say, "Oh, good." And he says, "Well, I'm going to throw it out now." And I said, "Oh, that's too bad." And he said, "What the hell you want me to do? Frame it?" And I laughed and I said, "One can always hope." And I had a nice discussion with this man afterwards.
Great.
And I just thought, I just thought that was great. I thought he was great.
Yeah.
I thought he had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
I have a sense of humor, and we had a great conversation out of that.
And it is the season of mailers. I mean,
it is.
My mailbox is,
it is
with the pitches, and it's very diplomatic that you did not disclose the first letter of his last name.
Oh no, yes.
Now, when we were at the Blogger Barbecue there, you and I had a conversation. You actually led with the idea of your goal is to make the issue of early childhood education, I believe you used the word sexy or I mean that word, the way that word is used in the political movement, that it needs to be talked about and thought through and enacted, change enacted there. So do you want to, in our conversation, you said you're pretty sure you're going to post on this issue, and you ended up soon after posting, I believe it was called "Many Children Left Behind." You just want to get at the substance of that post there and your thoughts on the issue.
Well, let me just back up a little and say that I've always been passionately interested in education as an issue, both a political issue and as a personal issue, because I see education as such an important tool in anybody's life. It's how you get from here to there. Anytime I've wanted to advance my life or to grow in some kind of way, it almost always requires education of some sort and learning. So I'm passionately interested in that subject. And when I got to the legislature, I chose to serve on the Education Committee because I see education as a path to social change and trying to help people grow up as critical thinkers, to look at the issues we have, look at the candidates we have, and make important, critical, informed decisions. So I'm jumping ahead a little on why I think education is so important. And even I was talking to somebody today who also agrees that education is part of the cornerstone that we have for democracy. In order for our democracy to work, we must have an educated, highly informed public. The blog I wrote about many children left behind is because I'm particularly interested in making sure that when kids get to school, that when kids get to kindergarten, that they're really ready to learn. And too many kids, these are the many kids left behind, are not. And kids get ready to learn because of the active kinds of brain stimulations that they have. It's not necessarily, when I talk about early childhood education, I'm not talking about sitting a child down with the alphabet and teaching them to read. It's as simple as going to the grocery store and saying, look at the pretty blue box. Oh, look at the circle on the box.
Right.
Look at the yellow color on the box. And all different kinds of stimulations that kids need so that they're prepared. And what we know, the science on this is settled science. We know that during the early years, the first 3 years, that your brain synapses make connections when they're stimulated in certain ways. What I said in the blog is when those stimulations fail to happen, then often those connections don't get made. So if a child comes to kindergarten without having the kinds of experiences that child needs to be intellectually prepared for kindergarten, then they start this educational race, so to speak, behind the starting line. And if they start behind the starting line, it's almost impossible to catch up. And what you and I talked about on the day we spoke at the Hamburger Summit was how often for that child, special ed follows them throughout their entire school career. And we here in Vermont know that our special ed costs are soaring. So the way that we might begin to bring down some of these special ed costs is by making sure that when kids start school, they at least get a good start and they're ready to learn.
Right. So does that translate into universal pre-K for?
It does. It does. It transfers into universal pre-K. And I want to be very careful here so that, because sometimes people get nervous about this. I want to, we don't have compulsory education in Vermont until I believe first grade. You're not even required to go to kindergarten. So nobody's talking about, in the ideal situation, there is a parent at home. There is a mom and dad and a parent at home who is the best teacher for the child, who is the first teacher for the child, and who can give all this stimulation that the child needs to grow. But we all know that we live in an economy that takes 2 working parents. So all too often there is not a parent at home who can do the kind of job of educating their child that they would like to do if they had everything the way they wanted.
Right.
So what I want is I want universal, high-quality pre-kindergarten to be available for people to take advantage of this because of their economic situation.
Okay, okay. And then my understanding is the state began an initiative called, is it Building Bright Futures?
There is Building Bright Futures.
Now, what's the history there and where is it now? Is it clear?
Well, I was the director of the Central Vermont Early Childhood Council. So up until a few years ago, there were early childhood councils throughout Vermont. Those early childhood councils have become Building Bright Future councils.
Oh, okay.
And it is taking baby steps towards universal pre-K. I don't feel that this administration, the Douglas administration, has done much to support Building Bright Futures.
Did they do the name change?
They did the name change, but there was virtually no money behind this.
That's been a common feature of the Douglas administration, to do a name change as reform, kind of.
That's right. And
they did that in mental health as well.
You were asking me before, we can't solve problems by throwing money at them. Nobody does that. On the other hand, I'd like to see the problem where money isn't one of the ingredients that you need to help. And that is one of the ingredients we need to move Building Bright Futures forward, and to make sure that there is the availability for a high-quality universal pre-K for every child in Vermont.
So there is presently, I guess, what, a regional infrastructure that you,
yes.
You wouldn't be reinventing the wheel from scratch, so to
no.
speak.
No.
These Building Bright Futures, they kind of in the shire towns, or they're spread out throughout the state?
They're spread out throughout the state. You know, there's the Central Vermont one that we have here, and then they're basically divided up the way they divide up the districts for health for human services.
Sure. Okay.
So however the human services are divided up, that's the way the Building Bright Futures councils are divided up.
Okay. Okay. Do you hope to introduce legislation to turn those councils into more of a universal pre-K?
Yes, I would be proud to sponsor a universal pre-K bill, and to do everything I can to bring it here in Vermont. That would be a real thrill.
Great. You actually referenced the throwing the money at issues, and that is very provocative title of a previous blog post you had was "Are you a tax and spend liberal?" You kind of took that stereotype on, and that was a very well received post at Green Mountain Daily. You got a lot of nice positive comments about that, and which makes some sense, because that really is this, you know, it's one of those phrases you hear and it's almost like the brain shuts off because you hear it so much. It's almost, you know, it's one of those classic conventional wisdom phrases that you really, you decided to, let's dissect this a little bit, and just if you could share a little bit about what you're doing with that.
What I said was I've never met a tax and spend liberal in my life. And I don't think any problems get solved by throwing money at it. In fact, I don't think throwing anything solves problems much at all. But I do believe in strategic investment. So, I mean, we talked about early childhood and making a strategic investment of money in early childhood up front, because prevention is always going to be much more cost effective than solving the problem that we didn't prevent before. But let's move on, say, and go to the other side of the education spectrum. Here in Vermont, we need to do better funding higher education. It's hard for us because we're a small state. And I served on the board of the state colleges, and so I really do know the problems. But we need to make investments in higher education if we expect to produce the kind of workforce that's going to have the high-tech jobs that we might have in Vermont if we bring internet down every dirt road. So I believe not in tax and spend, but tax and invest. And also, it's how what is our attitude towards our tax dollars? I'm sorry, in a way, that taxing always has a pejorative. Nobody likes taxes. I hate my taxes. I don't want to pay my taxes.
They're easy to run against.
And I understand that. But I also understand that my taxes are going to my local school that I do want to support. My taxes are going to making sure that the highways are safe and they're repaved, and I want to support that.
Right.
I want to make sure that I have a government that is responsive to people in need, and I pay taxes for that. And all these things are good things. They're not bad things.